Hello ladies and gentlemen, Gabester here. This is the Mythic tank guide for Kargath Bladefist. And tanking this encounter on Mythic is still quite simple, just like the heroic and normal version. There are a few new mechanics, but believe it or not, most of them do not involve tanks. So while you can somewhat help with them and moderately be affected by them, for the most part, your overall methods as a tank on this fight will not really differ from the heroic version. So just so you're aware, the roar of the crowd is a favor meter, which is in the form of an alternate energy bar. You can see an example here in the middle of the screen since I don't have it on my UI. And as this increases or decreases, this will change the amount of bonus damage that your raid will do to all sources. So it ranges from 0% up to 100% extra damage. Now that said, as mentioned before, you as a tank will not have much general impact on this other than, throwing out what extra sort of utility you can for your particular class to help the raid as they handle these mechanics and increase that. But it's just something to be aware of and why the strategies and positioning in particular will change throughout the fight. Probably the most common technique for increasing this is to kite Kargath during his Berserker Rush. So obviously, if you're the tank that's on Kargath at the time, you just need to stand behind him so you don't get rushed yourself. And if you have any utility benefit to the player that's kiting or tanking at the time, if they're using cooldowns, you can add that. So for example, Paladins, if you can use Hand of Protection the last 10 seconds of the Berserker Rush on that particular targeted player, they can just stand there and eat it and they'll be immune to the damage. So any utility like that might benefit a raid member for kiting will be beneficial, but otherwise you'll never be directly involved in this kiting path. The same basic idea also goes for the tigers that will spawn throughout the fight. These will target random raid members just like Berserker Rush, and they will fixate and chase the player. They cannot be tanked, they cannot be stunned. The only thing they can really be done to the tiger is to run it through fire, and upon doing so it'll be stunned for 10 seconds and take a bit of extra damage during this period. But again, you cannot directly help anybody other than utility with that. But this is another common technique for players to increase the overall roar of the crowd favor. Now the one thing you can do as a tank to help with roar of the crowd favor is if you are assigned to be part of the Spectator Team that's thrown up from Chain Hurl, you can of course help to deal with the ads as quickly as possible. Every time you kill an Iron Grunt up top, you will gain a small amount of favor for the raid, and therefore potential damage increase. So mechanically, the Spectator area is almost the same as it is on Heroic. The one thing that was reported from our team that was doing it was that the mobs like to heavily slow or snare the players that are up top. So if you are the tank going up there, be sure you use your all your movement capabilities that you have in your toolkit, so that when you get snared, you can just rush through and quickly aggro as many of the mobs as possible. Because the most efficient way to do it that we found is to aggro an entire side or as much of it as you can all at once, gather it up, bunch it up quickly, and then AE it down up top. So if your raid is building around that idea, you'll have a lot of cleave damage in your group, along with yourself and a healer that can provide movement boosts to each other, or at least to you as a tank, and allow you to gather up all those mobs quickly. Other than that, the mechanics are the same. You want to kill off the sort of big pseudo-named guys up there because they will throw stuff on the ground. But again, killing the small ones is also important on Mythic. So in addition to the standard tank swap mechanics and Impale, where you want to use cooldowns and all that good stuff, the best thing you can do for your raid on Mythic to help with survivability, outside of your own personal survival, is to handle the fire pillars. On Mythic, these will shoot out a little flame gout volley, which you can see flying constantly every 5 seconds that they're active. Because of this is a lot of potential damage on the raid that players need to very frequently dodge and therefore lose DPS time or otherwise suffer the damage. Because of their frequency and the number of fire pillars that will spawn, it is the tank's duty to despawn fire pillars that are unnecessary or not needed for other purposes. Now the key is knowing when you do need a fire pillar and when you don't. The general rule of thumb that worked well for us, and we are by no means masters of this fight, but it didn't take that many attempts, is to always leave one fire pillar active and sort of ready to go. The exception is if you know for a fact that nothing will require your use of it for a long time. So the two things that require fire pillar usage are if you're kiting Berserker Rush into it, just like you would on a normal or heroic version, then that player will need to make use of it. Or if a tiger is active or about to spawn, and that player wants to run the tiger into the fire, which is usually the case. But if neither of those are true, or you know it's going to be a delayed quite a while and another pillar will spawn, then you should quickly pull the tank into an existing pillar. And when you do so, you try to pull it into the newest pillar that spawned, the freshest one that appeared, because the pillars themselves have a set duration. They'll remain active for a certain period before they go away. So getting the new one is just more efficient. You're basically using that pseudo removal ability of getting rid of the pillar by running the boss into it on the newest one. So that's the most efficient way to do it. So I can't offer like a step-by-step, this pillar, you can get rid of this one, you have to skip, because it's dynamic. It's based on the randomness of how the encounter goes for your particular raid, how you handle the kiting, how you handle the tigers, all that stuff. But like I said, the general rule of thumb is leave one, get rid of the extra. And if you do that, overall you should be good outside of particular nuances for your own raid group. And this will greatly reduce the overall potential damage from Flame Gout on the raid and help out the healers a lot. So that's it. It's a very basic fight even on Mythic for tanking, primarily because the new mechanics don't really involve tanks. For better or worse, it's mostly left up to the raid to handle those. So outside of personal cooldowns, getting through the spectator area quickly to kill off the ads, and helping with the pillar reduction to avoid Flame Gout damage, that's about all you can do. So that is the Mythic tank guide for Kargath and Bladefist. As always, good luck, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.